Hi everyone, welcome back to Novel Nomad and welcome to Perth. So this is my Booklovers Guide to Perth video. So as you would know, I went to Perth for the book festival, the Scribblers Fest, which is a children's literary festival to see a much beloved author, Celine Kiernan. But I thought whilst I was in Perth, I might as well visit some of the amazing bookstores they have over there. The first one I went to was in the Claremont area where the book festival was held, and this is the Lane Bookshop. This is situated in this absolutely beautiful little arcade, and the bookshop itself is one of those adorably small but incredibly unique stores. It has a range of general new releases and fiction that you are bound to find in most bookstores. But it also has what I like to call the unique finds alongside the staff recommendations. So it's just such a great range of books to choose from. And I actually did manage to find a book that I've been hunting down for quite a while, and it was in such a gorgeous cover. But if you wanted to see the books that I hold, because this video was so long, I decided to do a separate haul video which will be coming out very soon. So keep an eye out for that on my channel. But just look at how adorably amazing. There's even book posters. Book posters, people. But yes, loved it. Hi everyone, welcome back to Novel Nomad. I've just explored a local bookstore in the Claremont area, but it is now time for the Scribblers Festival. So join me as we go and discover this amazing book festival, and it's a perfect day for it. Alright, so I just added this little bit clip in because it's one of those stations where you have to walk over the train line, and it's just such an adorably sweet train station. But once you get over the train line, you'll find the Good Shed, and this I believe is like an art/market venue throughout the year, but they did such a beautiful and amazing setup for the Scribblers Festival. There's a food area and there's also an art installation inside the Good Shed, which I will show you in just a moment. But of course, I must check out the festival bookshop. This was actually run by Boffin's Books, and all the books were supplied through them. So there is quite a range to choose from. Not as immense, I should say, as the Adelaide Writers' Week, because most of the authors have school events and they do lots of projects with different schools and different children's education groups throughout the week, not just a family weekend. But there was a good range of Celine Kiernan, so I was very happy to see that. And then of course Neil Schusterman, who I've recently become obsessed with in regards to Scythe and Thunderhead. And of course, it was just such a great little range to see all the authors that were there. But the art installation is all like knitted art that is basically sea life, and it's so beautiful. And there's a section of white coral that is just showing the kids how bleaching and how the corals are actually slowly dying. So it's a really educational, informative and adorable art installation. So up next is some clips of the talks.
To Paramount, pre-publication, which we were very excited about. The way that happens is I sent out the book. It was actually just the first draft of the book to my film agent, and my film agent said, "Let's put some feelers out there and see if there might be some interest." And then a few days later, my agent came back to me and said, "We're going to have an auction."
That's awesome.
Doing three of our guest authors, Lynette Noni from Queensland, Danielle Clayton from the US, and Celine Kiernan all the way from Ireland, talk about inventing their own fantasy worlds today. Hope you enjoy the session.
By real places, especially for Celine, was how much of Begone Raggedy Witches was influenced by the Irish landscape and folklore and such.
Almost everything I write is influenced by either something that I'm interested in history, or some way that I know humans have used or abused each other. Raggedy Witches, there's an animal. Oh, spoilers? No. No. So heck it. So the main character is she's a wee Irish girl she grew up not she grew up knowing that witches were part of her life, but not really understanding anything about the place her mum was from.
A story about this thing, race, class, gender. How do I do that without becoming preachy, without making it be like, Renee has something to say about intersectionality, and so, so then I have to think of a story. So it just depends. Every story has been different, but I do, the consistent thing for me is asking questions in the beginning, like, what if, or I wonder. I try to approach my writing from curiosity, so I can go out and find answers and not try to write something that I think I already know. So I'm learning as my character is developing too, if that makes any sense.
Alright, so I said goodbye to the book festival and hello to all the bookstores that I could find in the CBD, starting with Stefan's Books. Now this is sci-fi, horror, crime and fantasy books, and it's actually a great little store. Like, it's honestly just down the road from my hotel, so it was really easy to find, and it was just such an interesting range because we have a great sci-fi collection in the bookstore I work in, but this was like next level. Like, they had all the sci-fi master works that were there, all those beautiful yellow covers you just saw, and such an intense range from A to Z of sci-fi fantasy. I was very, very pleased. And then they did have a separate horror and crime section, but the sci-fi fantasy was my mainstay. They even have signed book posters. I love all these book posters. I think it's just such a great way to further promote the books. But I definitely recommend Stefan's Books. I got a really amazing short story collection here, and it was just something I've never seen before, and it's from an own voice writer, like a diverse voice. So I was just so pleased. But yeah, super great range, small tiny bookstore, but worth it. Next I went to Elizabeth's Books. So this one is mainly in Fremantle, but they do have a store in the CBD, and it's one of the oldest stores, apparently, oldest bookstores, but they're famous for their blind date with a book, and of course I had to participate. They're so cute. They have like a little ladybug stuck on the little notepad or the note, and it's really, really sweet, and I'm still using that as a bookmark. But this store is massive. Like, honestly, give yourself time to look through this store. It is not a quick hop in and browse. It is not, oh, let me just go find that book. It is honestly one of the hardest things to do, is to find a specific book. I was actually looking for a specific book, but there was no way I could locate it. It was so intense. But it's just such a weird little store. Like, there was a chandelier in the stairwell at one point, and then you go upstairs to this little kids section, which is in its completely own area. All the furniture is tiny, which is super cute. But it was just a very interesting and intriguing store. I highly recommend. So next there is Boffin's Books. Now, I instantly thought it was going to be like a huge scientific range, which there is. There's a lot of non-fiction in Boffin's Books, so I definitely recommend it if you're into non-fiction art, science, fashion, biographies even. There's quite a few biographies, but I definitely recommend it for non-fiction readers. But also go there for fiction readers. They have a very interesting range of books. What I would have to say is, you know those beautiful Penguin classics with that kind of tealy grey spine? They have the largest amount of translated fiction in those editions that I have ever seen. I was so tempted to get so many because I've just never seen them before, but recommend Boffin's, check that out. On a side note, this is an arcade. This is legit an arcade in Perth, built to look like this like Diagon Alley style street, and it is super weird, super touristy, let me just say that, but also super adorable. Like, you wouldn't think someone would build a Tudor style arcade in the middle of Perth, Australia. What do you know? The next is White Dwarf Books. This is the true sci-fi fantasy bookstore, and it was just honestly, once again, so much fun. I love these specialty genre stores. Like, of course, it went outside of its genre. It wasn't strictly adhering to sci-fi fantasy, but it was doing a pretty bang up job of being pretty freaking awesome. So what I loved about this is that it had a lot of editions in of the US, like the smaller paperbacks, and we don't really get them a lot here, and usually they tend to be quite expensive from importing them over. But White Dwarf Books were doing it proud. They had such a great range. And I also went to Planet Books. This was just north of the CBD, and it was a great area to go get food. I recommend that. So it's more of an evening venture. It's not the most intriguing range, I must say. It's got the classic new releases, penguins and vintage, but they do have a really quirky gift collection and some really lovely non-fiction like picture books and things that you would just have like as a coffee table book. They did have some really good range there. So it was definitely one that was just like a bit of a quick stop by and not one that I would spend hours exploring. Now lastly, I was recommended when I was over there on my lovely Instagram to visit Aspects, which is in fact the gift shop in the Botanic Gardens, which is the most gorgeous place you could ever go. But the gift shop itself is beautiful. They have a really great range of Australiana books, so books by local authors, books by local publishers, and lots of gardening books, of course, because you are in a Botanic Gardens. But it was just such a really lovely small range, but really crafted to strike the purpose of what the bookstore and what the store was really going for. So Australiana, cooking, gardening, really unique titles, which is great. But I do recommend going up to the Botanic Gardens because it is absolutely stunning. You get beautiful old gum trees like this, and you get views of the city and the Swan River, which is more like a lake because it's so huge. But you just get these absolutely gorgeous vistas from exploring the Botanic Gardens, and it makes the trip so worthwhile. It's just this stunning place to really savor and enjoy the time that you have. So thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed my Book Lover's Guide to Perth, and I'll see you next time. Bye.